So clear out the room, I'm coming through. They wanna see what I'm about. Yeah, I got skills, do it for the thrill. I'm on a pay.
Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and today I'm talking to you about the Alienware Area51m R2. I'm actually pretty excited to talk to you about this laptop because this is the Digit Zero1 Award for the best gaming laptop of 2020, and there's a fun story there. In fact, like, this laptop almost never made it into our assessment this year, but more on that later. Before we move forward, make sure to hit the subscribe button and of course also hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any future updates from us. Hey guys, my name is Swapnil and let's just straight away dive right into the Alienware Area51m R2. The specs on this laptop are actually pretty astounding. It's powered by an Intel Core i9-10900K desktop processor, an Nvidia GeForce RTX 2080 Max-Q Super, 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM clocked at 3200 MHz, 1TB NVMe storage, and of course a 17-inch 300Hz display. It's a pretty kitted out machine, and honestly, after having tested so many laptops throughout this year, I feel that this is one of the very few laptops that actually justifies the 300Hz refresh rate panel. It's got the right kind of components on board to drive this panel, and we're going to talk more about that in the later few sections. So with the specs out of the way, let's straight away get into our performance testing, which is starting with gaming. Now, remember how I talked about the fact that this laptop is kitted out in the perfect way to drive this 300Hz panel? Well, in a game like Doom Eternal, with the graphics settings set to Ultra, I was able to get a frame rate of averaging about 224 FPS. Now, if I was to turn down the graphics from Ultra to High, I see a jump in my frame rates to 255 FPS. And I'm pretty sure if I went down to medium, I'd be pretty close to that 300Hz mark. In fact, even titles like Forza Horizon 4 are north of 150 FPS, and games like Gears 5 deliver 127 FPS on average at their ultra graphic settings. If you're somebody who wants to play at the very top visual quality at 1080p, this machine, of course, is giving you extremely good frame rates. But if you want to really take advantage of the 300Hz refresh rate, drop your graphic down to maybe high. In some cases, let's say like CSGO or Overwatch, Valorant, maybe even medium for that matter, and see the panel drive all the way up to 300Hz. There's definitely something really amazing going on here, and all of this performance is achieved by two key things: hardware and software. We've covered the hardware parts of it in specs. Now I want to talk to you about the Alienware Command Center, which is key to driving this kind of performance. The Alienware Command Center is an annoying piece of software which hardly ever works. This is probably my fourth gaming laptop from Dell, so that's combining Alienware and Dell's G series, and every single one of them has had Alienware Command Center not launch up right. With this one, again, there were a lot of problems, but eventually once you do get it working, it's an actual treat. Through the Alienware Command Center, we're able to, of course, set up all the RGB zones and whatnot, but the real kicker is the fact that you can overclock both the CPU and the GPU on this machine, tweak the fan curves to your liking, and in case you want the maximum performance out of this, you want to drive the maximum frame rates, fastest render times, simply set it to overclock 1, set the fan profile to maximum and the power profile to high performance, and that combination is absolutely perfect to basically drive the most out of this laptop. You could also set a custom overclock, and the really cool thing is that once you dial in the settings, Alienware Command Center allows you to test that particular setting before you actually apply it. It'll tell you whether the profile works or not by giving you a pass or fail evaluation, and then you can apply it and see exactly how stable it is in the long run. So Alienware Command Center is very critical to getting the most out of this machine, and that's probably why it's very frustrating when it doesn't work. So there's that. Now let's talk about creative workloads. Our creative testing for gaming laptops is limited to just Lightroom and Premiere Pro. So with respect to Lightroom, the render times on this machine are actually pretty fast, nothing to really complain about. And similarly, it goes the same way for Premiere Pro as well. Whether you're exporting a 4K project into a 4K file or a 4K project down-res to a 1080p file, you're not really going to see any hiccups. whether it's a 5-minute render or a 20-minute render or anything longer. Even when it comes to exporting 500 raw files, the render times are actually pretty fast, one of the fastest we've recorded this year, and honestly no complaints there. One of the reasons why the Alienware is able to deliver this kind of performance is of course due to its really impressive thermal management, but there are caveats, and let's talk about that. Now interestingly, one of the reasons why the Alienware Area51m edged out the MSI GT76 Titan in our 0-1 evaluation was because this machine's fans are not as loud as the ones on the GT76. Now at the same time, what is interesting is that while during gaming the CPU and the GPU do not throttle, during creative workloads like exporting 500 raw files from Lightroom, which is purely a CPU bound task, both the 10900Ks in the Alienware Area51m R2 and even our MSI GT76 Titan, they both showed multiple instances of throttling. Now I'm going to talk about the Area51m in particular. While it does not sustain its peak boost clock of 5 GHz for very long, in fact in my testing I barely even ever noticed it hitting the 5.1 GHz overclock that we had set. What we do get, however, is the clock speed being sustained at 4.7 or 4.8 GHz. In fact, during the 500 raw file export, the clock speed on all cores did not drop below 4.7 GHz at any point. The throttling situation on this is definitely not as bad as the one we've seen on laptops like the Asus Zephyrus 15 Duo, which just would never sustain its peak clocks and would drop down horribly. So that's not happening here. Desktop grade processor, pretty impressive cooling. And the end result of that, of course, is the fact that the keyboard temperatures throughout the workloads, no matter how long and how sustained they may be, the keyboard does not spike up in temperature. The cooling on this is actually very impressive, and that's one of the reasons why I really found this laptop's thermal management to be really good, because one, it stops the CPU from clocking down horribly. Second, it keeps the temperatures of the keyboard well within the cool range. Although a small disclaimer, this laptop is being tested in winters in ambient temperatures which are far below our normal. So let's say maybe 14, 15, 16 degrees outdoors with the door open. So it does have that unfair advantage. However, when I did test this laptop in a room which was heated to 26 degrees, I did see the spike in the keyboard temperatures to about 38 degrees, which is still not as bad as what some others laptop will give you. But on this, that's not a problem at all. So that is something as well that works in the Area51m R2's favor. Next up, let's talk about the keyboard, the funky trackpad, and the I/O, okay, and all of the RGB associated with it. When I actually saw this laptop last year at CES, and when I say last year, I mean 2019 January, what was really cool was this honeycomb-like design that Dell has adopted, or rather Alienware has adopted for the rear grille, the grille underneath, and even the grille on top of the keyboard island where it vents some heat, or it works as some sort of exhaust or intake system. Essentially, it's a really nice look, but on the back you also have this really nice RGB strip that runs across the circumference of the back, and you can actually light it up in many ways. Now I know RGB is a very contentious topic amongst gamers, and it sort of is something that is frowned upon but also loved at the same time. I love RGB, I'm not gonna lie. You can judge me all you want, and this is really cool. You can also set the keyboard lighting. You can also set up the RGB controls for the trackpad, which lights up, and that's, I think, in my opinion, pretty trippy. So if you don't like it, of course you can turn it all off. You know, you're not losing anything, but you know what, better to have something and not need it than need it and not have it. Simple as that. In terms of the keyboard itself, now Alienware has actually made quite a bit of effort to get the keyboard feel right. In my conversations with some executives at Alienware when I was at CES, they shared that, you know, with the Alienware Area51m R2, they particularly wanted to give a very mechanical keyboard-like feel without actually giving users a mechanical keyboard. And honestly, this keyboard, even though it's a membrane switch, It feels really nice. It's got a soft but firm keystroke. It's very silent to type on, and that's one of the things I really like. While the clickety clackety of a mechanical keyboard sounds nice to you, it might really annoy the person next to you, or the person living in your house, or your colleague sitting next to you, and it's just an inconsiderate keyboard to use. But with this one, you don't have any sound, while you also get strong and sharp feedback, short actuation distances, and of course also this gorgeous, or rather this generous amount of travel that is normally associated with gaming laptops. So the keyboard experience is actually really nice. Big thumbs up to Alienware for the design and the implementation of these switches. Coming to the trackpad. Now the trackpad is a glass trackpad and is backlit. So whatever RGB profile you set for the keyboard, you can apply to the trackpad as well, or you can actually set them up individually. You could have your keyboard set up as green and your trackpad as blue, whatever, up to you. Red, blue, green, whatever colors you want. You can also do the rainbow. So, and it's really nice. It's just a cool party trick that the keyboard lights up, and so does the trackpad. The ports on the Alienware Area51m R2 are also actually quite well thought out. You have a Thunderbolt 3 port on the left side, next to a USB super speed port, and a separate microphone and headphone jack. On the other side, you have two USB type A ports and an SD card slot, an actual SD card slot. On the back, you've got Ethernet, you've got HDMI, you've got DisplayPort, all of which are capable of outputting up to 4K. You know, you'll be able to enjoy your games on an external monitor if you wanted to using this laptop. In fact, I've done that in a separate video. So overall, nothing really to complain about with respect to the port situation. It's fairly standard for a machine of this grade, and you won't find any sort of problems or complaints with it. Next, let's talk upgrades, because that's what this laptop is mostly all that it's about. So taking the Alienware Area51m R2 apart is actually a pretty easy job. Now this is supposedly an upgradable laptop, so Dell's actually made it super easy. All of these screws are captive, and as you unscrew them, the lid sort of lifts itself up. You still are required to put in a little force, and it just pulls off like that. Now on the inside is a whole host of things. There's a lot going on in this laptop, so let's just quickly go over it one by one. First off, right here is where this Intel Core i9-10900K is sitting, and if this is what you want to replace, you're going to have to take this entire top assembly off. What is actually easily user upgradable are the RAM sticks, the NVMe drive, and of course you can also add an additional hard drive right here. Now a couple of interesting things that I've noted. Firstly, in the Alienware Area51m R2, you only get 2 SODIMM slots. Now, interestingly, in the first version of this laptop, there were 4 slots here. So, which meant you could do 4 sticks of 16 GB each, get 64 gigs, and that wouldn't be a problem. But now you only get 2, and this is 16 into 2, so that's 32 GB right there. Secondly, it was a little tricky to find the second NVMe slot. It's actually buried right here. It's covered by the shroud a little bit, so you can't really see the M.2 port, but it's here. Thankfully enough, Dell has actually labeled this plastic cover very nicely as to what's where. Now, if you want to take this whole thing apart, you first start with these screws, and then you move your way to the other ones, and you can actually take the plastic off and expose the CPU, expose the GPU, which is right here. Repaste it if you need to, and maybe even replace this 10900K with an 11th gen processor if and ever that comes out and is compatible with this system. The other really cool thing that I really liked is to do with this 2.5-inch drive bay. Now, if you lift that up, you'll see down here that the connector is, your SATA connector is actually just taped over here using white tape, and I mean, it's a premium laptop, and this is like a very jugaad like solution to that, but it gets better. The screws for actually putting your hard drive in place are also put under this tape over here, and you can actually see them come through on the other side. I thought that was actually very hilarious. It's ingenious because this sort of ensures that the screws are inside your laptop and available when you actually want to use them, instead of, you know, them being put in a little plastic baggie which lives inside the laptop box, and then one fine day when you actually need them, you discover that they're gone. So there's that. All of the connectors are very well labeled. That's really cool. Over here, for example, it says that the secondary SSD slot, which is an M.2 slot, can only accommodate NVMe, not an M.2 SATA drive. So that's clear. Here's our 1TB drive, and so that also corroborates my belief that this is not a RAID 0 setup. And so yeah, that's a quick look inside the Alienware Area51m R2, the only fully upgradable laptop in the market right now. Next up, since we've shown you the inside, talked about the upgradability of this laptop, let's just quickly dive into the drive. The really cool thing is, you've got this ultra fast NVMe drive on board, which is great. If you're like me, you'll probably end up filling it up like that. So you can slot in an additional 1TB hard drive into the assigned spot if you want. If you want to keep your things fast, then you could put in a 1TB 2.5-inch SATA SSD. You could also additionally add a 1TB NVMe drive, and you have this option of, okay, you can do a RAID 0 setup between the two NVMEs with the third hard drive or the SATA SSD as a separate. So you have a lot of options, and if you've got the money, you can really get into this whole upgrade situation. So I know a lot of you out there would probably end up buying a machine like this, not for gaming. Maybe, well, you might game on it, but also maybe to do architectural design, 3D modeling, things like that. And those projects take up a lot of space. Like, just when I stitch panoramas from maybe 10 high resolution images, which is considered a very small panorama to begin with, my PSD files go into like 4, 5, 6 gigs even. If you shoot 8K video or 4K video, you would want terabytes upon terabytes of onboard storage to not just be able to store this project, but also to be able to edit on it with enough cache space. So in that regard, I feel the Area51m R2 offers you a lot by giving you two M.2 NVMe slots and a separate SATA connector as well. So you can just really, work out that storage combination to your liking. Next up, let's talk about the display and sound, because both of them are pretty awesome and deserve to be talked about. The 300Hz panel is IPS and it's not very color accurate. So this 17-inch panel is IPS, full HD, and has a refresh rate of 300 Hz. It does manage to hit the 300 Hz refresh rate. It does not support HDR, unfortunately. And what would be really nice is that if it was color accurate right out of the box, which it is not. So, but thankfully, because it is IPS, you can color calibrate it and have it be ready for color sensitive work. But as long as you're limiting yourself to the sRGB color space and not trying to get into the white gamut space. So there's that. The sound from this laptop, okay. Windows machines traditionally have horrible sound, horrible to barely average at best. This machine is loud.
Memory for faces. We're closed right now.
Need to talk to Punch and Judy. She in her den.
Yep. Take the stairs down.
You can watch movies on it. You will enjoy them. I watched The Matrix on this the other night. Thoroughly loved it. You can game on it. While it will not give you the spatial awareness, yes, there is dynamic audio, and Alienware's got a bunch of audio presets on board to sort of emulate that gaming sound, but spatial awareness is definitely lacking. But at the same time, it's extremely loud and it is also very clear, and that's the important part, because it will not mix up gunfire, for example, with explosions, with dialogues. All of that doesn't sound muddled together. You do hear the clarity between all of these different sounds while gaming. I've been playing Gears 5 on this. It's a game I love playing over and over again. Same thing with Doom Eternal. And honestly, it's been a very long time since I felt like, okay, I can just rely on onboard speakers. I genuinely don't like using headphones while gaming, so this has actually been quite a treat to use. Okay, last but not the least, build and design. Like, typically I try to go in order of things that I feel would be of most interest to you guys. And build and design generally comes last because everything tends to be very generic. But with this one, it's been hard to decide what order to go in, because all of these pointers are very important and they're actually very interesting on this machine. So is the build and design. And I want to start with this hinge. Like this thing is so solid, it takes two hands. Like you can close it, but if you try to open this up, the whole base moves. And once you set this display at a particular angle, it will stay there. It will not wobble, it will not flex. In fact, there's no flex on the top lid, there is no flex on the keyboard island, there's no flex on the bottom, and that just feels very nice. Like you're paying a lot of money for this laptop, like a lot of money, and so you want that quality of construction, and Alienware definitely delivers. If I genuinely had to nitpick, okay, actually no, this is not nitpicking, this is straight up something I do not like, is the use of glossy plastic on the display assembly. Like this thing just attracts so much dust and fingerprints that you will spend a lot of time just cleaning it, because it just looks that ugly once it gets dirty. So that's points docked from there. But construction quality wise, really impressive. No flex anywhere. I do like the fact that the vents are all placed somewhat away from the ports, and they're not directly exhausting heat onto whatever peripheral you may have attached. They're not exhausting heat directly onto your hand, like in the case of some other gaming laptops we've seen where the vents are more towards the front, and it's just stupid. Like, why would I want to burn my hand while trying to play on your laptop? So there's that. Also, fun fact, when the fans on this thing are running at max, they shoot air out like for quite a distance. So very strongly recommend that if you have this laptop placed against a wall or like, you know, a dead end, basically, make sure there's about 8 to 10 inches of clearance, just, you know, to not cause problems. Build quality wise, one thing I do want to say is that when we opened this laptop up, we looked around. This is supposed to be a laptop that's upgradable, even all the way down to its CPU and even the GPU. If Dell ever decides to make custom modules for future GPUs, they would be plonked into this. And even the insides are labeled extremely well, and Dell has a very nice, neat guide on how you can take the whole laptop apart. And that to me is A+, because here's a manufacturer who's actually made it super easy not only to take the bottom lid off, but also take the insides apart, you know, and that's something that I wish more manufacturers would adopt. But so far, that's just how Dell's approached it. So there you have it, guys. Long review of the Dell Alienware Area51m R2. Really impressive as a gaming laptop, but and actually really impressive even as a creator laptop, no doubt about it. But we've also got laptops like the MSI Creator 17, which beat the pants off this machine when it comes to like specific 3D workloads and video workloads. So all that later. But if you're looking for a top of the line gaming laptop to be a desktop replacement, or a gaming laptop that could be used in your 3D work, gaming, all of that for the next few years, the Alienware Area51m R2 might actually be the perfect machine for you, because it's got everything that's upgradable. It's got a future-proof display, 300Hz refresh rate, IPS, color accurate. You've got strong points there. When Intel launches its 11th gen CPUs, as long as they're compatible with the socket, you can take this i9 out and put in the i9 11 whatever into here, 11900K if you want, and that'll go in here. You get more power. If Nvidia tomorrow releases the 30 series of GPUs and Dell decides to create a custom module for that, you can put that in here as well. Of course, all this will cost you, but the point is you're future-proofing this machine, and that's something that's always been one of the biggest fall points for laptops. So long story short, super impressive laptop. If you've got the money, there are a lot of really sound arguments why you should look to buying this laptop instead of anything else in the market. We will also be comparing this with the MSI GT76 Titan in a separate video, which is the same grade of hardware, and but very different in terms of its design. So we'll look at that as well, and that's a little pricier, and then we can go over which is the best, which is the not, for specific use cases, of course. But for now, that's it from me, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and before you leave, make sure to hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon so that you don't miss the review of the MSI GT76 Titan, the comparison between the Alienware Area51m R2 and the GT76 Titan, and of course a lot of other content that is going to be coming out in the next few weeks from us. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.